My eyes opened abruptly in the hospital recovery room, and the doctor immediately leaned over my shoulder and said in this urgent voice, "You have cancer." Geez, I thought. I was still half awake. What kind of bedside manner is that? I had just come in for a routine screening. I felt fine. I didn't expect any problem. "But it'll be okay," he said. "It's really small and we caught it in time." But they hadn't caught it in time, and it had spread. And so I had to go back a few weeks later for major surgery. And after that surgery, I spent weeks at home recovering from it, and I spent a lot of time sitting outdoors under these huge old pine trees. And there were fall wildflowers and butterflies everywhere. Sunlight glittered on the bay next to the house, and it glittered on the pine needles above my head. And what I felt was gratitude. It was just gratitude to be a part of this incredibly beautiful living earth. And the absolute conviction that if death comes, nothing's lost. There is nothing really to be afraid of in this situation. My husband and I went down to the Moffitt Cancer Center for a second opinion. And on the way down, we stopped at the Weeki Wachee River. The Weeki Wachee River is one of these spring-fed streams in Florida which has crystal clear cold water, and underneath that crystal clear cold water there's emerald green meadows of water weeds and schools of fish just darting everywhere, and manatees under the canoe, and there were eagles overhead, and it was incredibly healing, again, just like under the pine trees, to be out there in such a vibrant system, such a piece of the earth that was so full of life. And I felt such joy to be a part of all this system, even though death is a part of that. It works with life and death, and it was okay. And later on, I was doing the chemotherapy, and I got really sick, and I ended up in the hospital for quite a long time. And all the neighbors always wanted to pray. And I was very grateful for their kindness and their concern, even though their language wasn't exactly what I was used to in my own religious practice. This all culminated one Sunday afternoon when 20 neighbors or so appeared in our front yard from a local church to have a prayer meeting to help my husband and myself as we were going through this. And it was quite well known that neither of us were quite a conventional believer, and they just weren't quite sure what to do with a couple of people they wanted to help who might be in real theological trouble here. So I began by thanking them for all their concern and for the casseroles they brought, and everybody began to relax a little bit. Eventually I said, "You know, the biggest mistake you can make in a situation like this is to say, 'Why me?' Because sooner or later, we all have something like this hit us. There's always something that we're going to have to go through. And these situations are wonderful teachers if we will relax and quit resisting and fighting them and allow them to teach what they have to teach." And the minister in this group, he said, "That's absolutely right. We should give thanks to God for these hard situations, because these are the things that bring us closest to God, and that's the most important thing we should be doing with our lives." And then he turned to his parishioners and he pointed to them one by one and he said, "And you should give thanks for the heart attack, and you should give thanks for the mental illness, and you should give thanks for the gunshot wound." And everyone he pointed to absolutely agreed with him. And then they all began to share the value of those experiences and what they had learned from it. And it just blew me away. I thought, well, you know, it's one thing to say, yes, it's a teacher, but to give thanks? Could I do that? And so here's some of the things that I'm thankful for. We don't fully experience what it is to be human until we go through the tough stuff. The tough stuff is what teaches us wisdom and patience and insight and makes us a little bit more wise if we will allow it to do that. Another thing that I've learned, to live life in the present moment, and I could never do it before, but now, rather than being lost in some fearful fantasies of what might or might not happen in the future, rather than being preoccupied with things that are done and over with, I actually find that I do experience life moment by moment, and that makes life a gift. It's a very different, rich, and intense way to live. When I was really sick and in the hospital, there was a point where the talking, analytical voice inside the head faded away, and there was just awareness and stillness. And then as I got better, I could watch it come back. The mind and the body have built-in mechanisms for coping with things when they get really tough. And when we all face those final moments, it won't be perhaps quite as hard because those mechanisms are there to let us do it without being quite so in a panic about it. I've also learned not to take anything for granted, to appreciate whatever comes up that's positive, and also not to get upset with the trivial irritations of life. When you let go of that, then life every moment becomes a lot richer. I now know as experiential reality the impermanence of the individual life. We're all only here for a little while. That's the way the system works. We all think we know this, but we don't believe it until it happens. But that's a real and a wonderful part of life. The way life remains creative. It's a wonderful thing. If we can actually let go of our own personal fear, we can see the brilliance of a system that is endlessly generating new minds and new creativity. If Mozart hadn't died, Stravinsky could have never appeared. And this happens over and over and over again. And that's what keeps human society going. That's what keeps the whole world going. And if we can let go of fear, we can see the brilliance of it. I'm also grateful for the fact that I have, as a result of this, met some extraordinary people. Doctors who work incredibly long hours trying to help people in this situation. Nurses who can not only do their job but maintain a cheerful atmosphere and keep people from being frightened in what could otherwise be a grim situation. And these people do this every day, year after year. They're incredible people. So it was amazing to meet them. And I've also been able to be a little bit more easy about dropping the ego-based worries about money and career and learn to spend my time doing what's really important and what's really satisfying. And that would be hard to do if I hadn't had this situation. And then finally, I found there's a lot of rational evidence for the survival of consciousness after death. We don't have to take that anymore as strictly a matter of faith. And if that evidence bears out, and if in fact we do survive the death of the brain, then we don't have to be afraid of death. In fact, death may just be a better view of the larger realities of the universe, the larger wonders of the universe. So it may even be something to look forward to once we get used to the idea. So once we can stop whining about our situation, it can become a very rich and intense way to live. Yes, I always keep in mind something that a Protestant theologian once said, "Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime, therefore we must be saved by hope. Nothing true and beautiful makes any sense in any immediate context of history, and therefore we must be saved by faith. And nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone, therefore we must be saved by love." And this is what I've learned so far.